Shabbat Shalom. There are some debates in Jewish history that span millennia. We know how to keep an argument running. And one of the most consequential, in my opinion, is the debate over whether or not we should investigate the underlying meaning of a mitzvah. The underlying meaning, purpose, cause, origin of a mitzvah. Now that may sound like a strange thing to debate about. I mean, after all, some mitzvot, we are given an explanation of why we are doing the mitzvah. When we are wearing tzitzit on the corners of our talitot, it says that we are doing this so that we will look at these and we will remember God and we will keep ourselves from our transgressions. Seems pretty straightforward. Other mitzvot, much less straightforward. God never explicitly tells us why pig is not kosher and beef is. And so there have been many who have argued it is our duty to uncover, to dig, to investigate in order to find the differentiation between those two. Likewise, for other mitzvot such as shatnez, the prohibition on mixing wool and linen into a woven fabric and garment. Many wish to uncover the secrets of why that mitzvah is that mitzvah. And there is a huge body of literature opposing this entire investigatory thread, that one should not delve into the meaning of the mitzvot. Strange thing to say. Who are we as Jews that we would ever not delve? It seems to be baked into our literature that we ask, we dig, we pursue, we try to find out more and more. I mean, after all, our books are filled with different interpretations, hypotheses, analyses, investigations. Who would ever say, don't investigate? And why? Well, let's investigate the opinions of those who say don't investigate. The underlying cause, the underlying issue that they are dealing with is that there is a feeling that over-investigation will deprive one of pure kavanah, of pure intentionality. Now, to understand their position, we need to understand what Judaism means by that pure kavanah, that higher level of understanding that we feel while we are performing a mitzvah. So let's take an example. You are sitting down at your Seder and you need to eat matzah. How do I know I need to eat matzah? Well, the Torah told me I need to eat matzah. And the Torah gave me some explanations of why I should eat matzah. For example, to remember Passover, which is in itself a remembrance of leaving Egypt. Slavery. Well, wait, which one is it? Am I eating matzah to remember when I was a slave? Or am I eating the matzah to remember the leaving of Egypt? The leaving? The slavery? It is both, but if it's both, it's also neither. How can I have a pure intention when I am lifting that piece of matzah to my mouth of exactly why I'm eating this, if there is a debate over whether it is more a remembrance of the Exodus or more a remembrance of our slavery, of the deprivation of being in Egypt? What is going through my mind when that matzah hits my tongue? If I am broken in multiple directions of what is the true understanding, the true meaning, then how can I have pure kavanah? How can I have a pure observance of that mitzvah? So instead, they offer alternative kavanot, alternative ways. Rather than focusing on what is the true, singular, perfect understanding of the meaning, we offer alternatives that one can feel when engaged in the performance of a mitzvah. So let's start off with the first, and perhaps the most common that you might have heard of. Obedience. I know, sounds weird. Contemporary people, we don't like that word. Not at all. Obedience is what your dog gives you, and even then, maybe not so much. When Judaism talks about the kavanah of obedience, we mean being in that moment, perfectly consumed with the idea that what I am doing purely because God has asked me to do it. I need no further justification. I need no further explanation. There does not need to be any greater reason than God has asked me to do it, because that in itself is the greatest reason possible for the performance of an act. That when I sit down and I eat that piece of matzah, I don't have to be clouded with the questions of exactly when and where and how the Torah commanded me to do this and what I am supposed to feel about the slavery, about the Exodus. All I need to worry about, all I need to fill myself with, is the feeling that I am fulfilling what God has asked me to do. That with this simple bite, I am allowing myself to be given over wholly, in this moment, to an act that the force that willed the universe into existence has asked of me at this moment. That like a planet moving according to the laws God laid down, I move at this moment, I bite this matzah with the same level of complete and utter obedience to God's rules. I put myself at the mercy of God's gravity as I perform the deed. It is a beautiful feeling, and if you've never tried to observe a mitzvah with that intentionality, simply allowing yourself to immerse yourself in the performance of a mitzvah purely because it has been asked of you, trying to drive away all the other doubts, the questions, the other worries, but just for that moment to know that you are fulfilling a mitzvah. If you have never tried that, well, do. We're about to get to the Musaf service, one of our mitzvot. We're about Kiddush and Motzi, another set of mitzvot. There are many different occasions just in today, let alone tomorrow and the days to come. When you are giving tzedakah the next time, don't try and deconstruct the ideas of progressive taxation and of charity and the support of those that are poor. Don't try and wonder about the intricacies of society and how I am actually fulfilling this or that economic model. When you put the money in the pushka, when you write a check, or as is more common these days, click on Zephi, for the moment do so just with the idea that God has asked me to give. And that is enough, because that is everything. But for some, this is an unsatisfying idea, and for some it is still a very difficult bar to clear. The modern world has made us very, very hesitant to allow ourselves to feel a sense of completeness when we are completing the ask, the request of a God. So let's instead turn to joy. This is the most famous and popular idea within the early Hasidic movements, that when we are fulfilling a mitzvah, we should allow ourselves to be suffused with the spirit of joy. Again, go back to that piece of matzah. We have, as part of our custom, a requirement that we stop eating earlier in the day, so that by the time we get to that matzah, we can eat it with joy. We can eat it with gusto. And I'll tell you, it works. All the times you've ever heard somebody complain, when do we eat during the Seder, they are in fact merely trying to sharpen the joy that you will feel when you put that piece of matzah in your mouth. The delay is helping to whet the appetite and to allow it to explode within us with pleasure. The pleasure that comes simply from eating, but also the pleasure of being able to eat in that moment. This is characterized most famously, of course, by the blessing of the Shehechianu, when we thank God for allowing us, enabling us, keeping us alive to reach this moment, just this instant, to feel joy simply at being alive at this way, and joy at this moment of being free and capable of experiencing this mitzvah. To do so with a smile, with tears of happiness on our face. Again, it's not always easy for everyone to simply allow themselves to feel that joy of the moment. Many of us are burdened by concerns and worries that threaten or sometimes succeed in pushing out those moments of happiness that are ours, that are available to us. But this feeling of joy can be all-consuming and can be incredibly powerful and uplifting, and does not depend in any way, shape, or form on knowing why we're doing what we're doing. We don't have to understand the intricacies of the history, the philosophy, and the theology of the matzah to still feel that joy of taking that first bite on the Seder night. And then there are other ways as well to allow ourselves to give over in this fullness of intentionality, this immersion of Kavanah. One of the most famous, but fraught, is through the performance. That while we are enmeshed within the performance of the mitzvah, we allow ourselves to be fully focused on exactly what we are doing. The feel of the matzah there beneath the cover, the lifting of the matzah as we say the blessing, the breaking off, the feeling, the tactile sensation of that matzah coming loose in our hands, ensuring that we are doing it right, the careful positioning of it and the eating of it, the sprinkling of salt, the other elements and tributes that we do throughout the ceremony. It can sometimes become difficult because people will become more performative, unfortunately, but through our precise execution of a mitzvah, whether it be eating a piece of matzah or carefully putting on the talit for the first time. It doesn't always stay exactly where we might want it, but that careful wearing of the first time, the careful enunciation of our tefillot or our brachot, our prayers and our blessings, that in that consumption of our full attention in the details of the performance, we can feel a sense of total immersion. Kavanah is not meant to be interrupted, is not meant to be divided. Our intentionality should be on what we are doing. Can these two coexist? Well, they must. Because you see, there is a danger that is lurking within the idea of, I need to know the meaning. I want to know the meaning. I have to know the meaning. I'm going to investigate the meaning. Because for many centuries, we have seen that people who think that they have had their eureka moment, that they understand now the meaning of the mitzvah, drop the mitzvah now that they know the meaning. Because if the mitzvah is only a vehicle for some deeper philosophical truth, for some theological idea, well, once I have grasped that idea, why do I need the wrapper anymore? The mitzvot are like booster rockets to bring us into God's presence, but once we are in God's presence, well, now my intentionality is perfect. Now my connection to God is exquisite, and I do not need to be bothered by the mechanical, physical, performative acts that the mitzvot are in this world. And time again, we have seen people throughout history who have advocated for exactly this type of uplift, that the mitzvot are no longer needed. This mitzvah can be retired, that mitzvah can be retired, because now we truly understand the purpose. And having learned the purpose, we are free from the burden of the performance. You can see why the people who are focused on pure Kavanah rather than understanding get a little skittish. Because it turns out that the actual performance of the mitzvah, with that deep, purposeful action, that understanding that I am here either in joy, here either in obedience, or here either in the tactile expression of what God has asked me to perform at this moment, this is an incredibly important guardrail against that solipsism, that self-absorbed, that egoism that tells me, since I know it all, I don't have to do it anymore. The mitzvot are there as guardrails to protect us from ourselves, to protect us from those voices within that say, you don't really need to do it. You're better than this. Why do you need to be reminded of these things? Why do you need to remember the slavery or remember the Exodus? You know what that means. You don't need to eat matzah. You don't have to have a seder. You're better than this. You have already graduated from these childish acts. And so Judaism says, no, it doesn't work like that. You cannot expect yourself to understand the mitzvot that completely. That there will always be layers and layers and layers. And yes, you are permitted to pursue them. In the end, the debate has come down, as is so often the case. It depends. Pursue the meaning, pursue the understanding, but with humility and with caution. And never believing that your intellectual understanding is a substitute for your kavanah, for your pure intentionality while performing. If you hold up a piece of matzah and the only thing you see there is a remembrance of slavery, and yet it does not move you, does not move you to feel closer to God, it does not move you to feel closer to the moment of joy, it does not move you to feel closer to the very physical thing that you are doing, then you didn't really understand. Then you are incomplete in your performance. and you are incomplete in your understanding. Judaism asks more of us than that we simply do without question, or that we understand without doing. Judaism is a fusion of both sides of what it is to be a human. To understand deeply, to perform with pure intention, and to continue to gain and learn throughout all the days of our lives. This is the gift of Torah. This is the gift of mitzvot. This is the gift of Judaism. Hold on to it and mean what you mean. Oh dear, that's much further down than I thought. Shabbat Shalom.